All right, guys. So today we're going to be working on 1D and 1E. So our goal is to get through 1D and 1E today. So if we can go into our classrooms, open up 1D to start off with. I'll share my screen and we'll start getting through that work. All right. So open that up. All right. So before I share my screen, just with 1D today, we're going to continue working with a client. His name is Trent Adams. So just give you a bit of background on Trent as our case study for 1D. As you can see on your page, he's a 29-year-old male who's come to your fitness facility and you've done a pre-screening with him. And his main goal, his primary goal is to increase his fitness so he can just be healthier in himself, but as well as he wants to improve his stamina. So when he goes mountain bike riding, he can last longer when he's doing his ride. So that's who our case study is today, and that's what all these questions are going to reflect off when we're going through today's course. So to start off with today, guys, the first question is asking about Trent and his pre-screening form. So this is what we went through last week. I'll get it up again on my side so you can have a quick look. But the first question that we're going to go through is we have to identify his overall risk, his risk score. So in this box here, it was going to ask you how many risk factors is Trent got, and then what is his overall risk level. So factors go here, overall risk level goes below. So if we're looking at his factors, just to quickly go over this again for everyone, because again, this is a really important part of the course we need to know. So with our adult pre-screening tool, there's two stages to it. Stage one, we're going to ask the client 7 questions. Now, if they answer yes to any of these 7 questions, they're classified as a high-risk client. Now, with Trent here, he said no to these first seven questions, which is great. It means he's not a high-risk client, and it means that we don't need a doctor's clearance before he can start exercising with us. So that's fantastic. If we move to stage 2 now, we're going to go through each one of these questions and use this key here, the middle column, to work out if he gets a risk factor point for that question or not. So with question 1, it says that he's a 29-year-old male. Now, if he's over the age of 45, or he's a male over the age of 55 and a female, he would get a +1 for that question. Okay, so because he's 29, he wouldn't get anything for that question. Question 2, he hasn't identified he's got any family history of heart disease, so he wouldn't get any risk factors for that. Question 3, he has said that he's a smoker, so he would get a risk factor. So that's our first risk factor there for smoking. So what I want you guys to do now is I want you to go into your assessment, and where it says here 1, I want you to put +1 smoker and then put a comma. So +1 smoker. That's what we've got to have here for our first, for our first part. But we are going to put more in this row. So just put +1 smoker and then put a comma next to it, because there is more risk factors that Trent gets. All right, question 4, it talks about his physical activity levels. So if he does less than 150 minutes a week of exercise, he gets a +1. If he does more than 150 minutes of exercise a week, he gets a -1. And if he does vigorous exercise for more than 150 minutes a week, he would get a -2. Now, he only does exercise for 60 minutes a week, which is under 150 minutes a week. So that's another +1 here. So just next to what we just wrote there, just put a comma and then just put +1 for less than 150 minutes a week of exercise. All right, question 5, we're looking at his BMI. So his BMI is 26.2. So if it's over 30, it's a +1. It's under 30, so it's nothing. And then for questions 6, 7, and 8, he said no for each one of those questions. If he would have said yes, he would have got a +1, but the fact he said no means he doesn't get any risk factor points. So his overall risk score is a +2. All right. So his overall risk score is a +2. So what does that mean? All right. So if the client is 2 risk factor points or more, he's classified as a moderate risk client. So what I want you to do in that box underneath there where it says overall risk level, we're going to put down that Trent is a moderate risk client. So let's put that down, that Trent is a moderate risk client. And that's that first question done, guys. So that's that one done, nice and easy. All right. So moving on to question 2. So question 2 says, explain the results of Trent's pre-exercise screening check and recommend suitable training intensity and what he should be doing for his RPE and for his percentage of his maximum heart rate. So the first part of this question is that we just have to, it says here, like structure as if you're sending Trent an email explaining his pre-screening form. So in that top box, you can see there, I want you to kind of put something together. So I think the main things that we want to talk about is what his overall risk score was. So, structure like an email. So dear Trent, after reviewing your results from your pre-exercise risk assessment, your overall risk score was a +2. What contributed to those factors? So the reason why you got a +2 was because that number 1, you're a smoker, and number 2, that currently you do under 150 minutes a week of exercise or something along those lines. What does this mean for his training? So that this means that he can only train at 75%, up to 75% of his maximum heart rate. So we're just going to say that due to being a moderate risk client, initially with your training, Trent, we only can train you up to 75% of your maximum heart rate. And then what would you recommend? What type of training would you recommend him do? Remember, we're not personal trainers. We're not going to take him physically through the training. We're just recommending what he should do at the gym by himself. And then, if a referral was needed, we would put it down there as well, but a referral isn't needed. So you can just leave that blank. All right. So that's the next part, guys. Let's quickly put something. It doesn't have to be too long. It just has to be like 1 or 2, kind of little paragraphs explaining what his overall risk score was, what contributed to that, what does this mean for his training, and then some recommendations. Cool. All right, so let's quickly nut something out there. So just make sure, guys, that we do add what we're going to recommend, what type of training. So what type of training can you do where you're not fully having to, exert a lot of energy and a lot of effort, because he's got to keep his heart rate below 75%. So, for me, stuff like resistance training is really good because you're not, on a treadmill running and getting your heart rate up really high, but you're still working hard, but just not at a really high intensity. So resistance training would be really good. Some banded work would be really good for him. Some stuff like yoga would be good, some swimming would be good, because these are all low intensity kind of cardio exercises that he can do to improve his cardiovascular fitness, but at the same time keep his heart rate at that 75% or lower. So what type of training would you recommend Trent do? All right, and then below that, we've got this RPE intensity. So RPE stands for rate of perceived exertion. So this is the intensity that the client feels that they're working at, not a number that you put on the client, but it's a number that the client puts on themselves. So, we've identified that he can only train up to 75%. So what do we think that is? Is that a 5 RPE, a 6 RPE, a 7 RPE, an 8 RPE, a 9 RPE, or a 10 RPE? What do you reckon? If we're only training at 75%, what RPE is would you want the client to stay under?
Maybe an RPE of 7 or 8?
Yep. So we want the client to stay under 7.
Under 7.
So RPE intensity has to be under 7 RPE. Okay. So that's not 7, that's under 7. So we want, if we ask the client, out of 10, how hard you're working right now, it's either a 6, a 5, a 4, a 3, a 2, or 1. Yeah, it's not 7. So the RPE intensity has to be under 7 RPE. And then on the right-hand side, it talks about the maximum heart rate. So to work out the client's maximum heart rate, we're going to do 220 minus the client's age. The client's age is 29. So if we do 220 minus 29, and then we times that by 75%. So the easiest way to time something by 75% is to times it by 0.75. So if we then go 220 minus their age times by 0.75, yeah, their maximum heart rate is around, and I'm pretty sure this is right, it's like 134 beats per minute. But if someone can calculate that for me, or I might just do it on my phone right now just to make double check.
Did you say 198 beats per minute?
Was it 134 beats or something? So 220 minus his age of 29.
143.
Yeah, might be right. 143 might be right. Yeah, he's 191. So his maximum heart rate shouldn't ever go over 191. So to find 75% of that, if we times that by 0.75, it's 143. Yeah. So his maximum heart, he's 75. So if most people these days, guys, either have, what I've got on now, which is like an Apple Watch or a smart watch, or they will actually wear heart rate monitors. Like, most gyms now have the option where you can buy a heart rate monitor when you sign up to the gym. So if a client is a moderate risk client, we're just going to keep a track on that heart rate when they're training to make sure it stays below 75%. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? No, all good? All good, perfect, sweet. All right, so I'll just give you one more minute just to fix up that letter if you want to add to that letter. So Tyler, you just got to tell me, you're not going to put in RPE 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You just got to pick one of them. So we just said there that it's below 7. So you're just going to delete all that and just put RPE must stay below 7. And then the percentage is 220 minus 29 equals 191. And then times that by 75% gives us 143. All right, moving on to the next question, guys. So question 3, it says, list and explain to Trent 3 program aims you think we should incorporate into his training in order for him to achieve his goal. So just recapping on what Trent's goal is to increase his fitness so he can get healthier and have more stamina to go mountain bike riding. That's his goal. So program aims, guys, we've got to pick 3. Here are some examples that you can choose from. So his program aim might be to improve his lower body endurance. It might be to improve his VO2 max, which is his cardiovascular fitness. It might be to improve his strength. It might be to improve his power. So, there's some examples. There's other ones that you can choose if you want to choose, but there's some examples that I've just put down. So after you pick 3, then you need to explain. Okay. So when explaining, you need to address the following. So how will this help Trent achieve his goal? And how will you structure his training to achieve the aim? So for an example, I might say that one of my program aims is to improve his lower body muscular endurance. Now, the reason why I've chosen this is because mountain bike riding, is all lower body. I know you use your upper body, but predominantly it's your lower body. So if I can improve his muscular endurance of his lower body, then I know that he'll have more stamina when he's riding. Now, how I'm going to structure his program to achieve this is that the first 4 exercises of every session he does are going to be a lower body circuit where he's going to do 4 exercises back to back in a little circuit, all lower body. And they're going to be high reps, so around about 12 to 15 reps for each exercise. And he's going to go through that 3 times before every session. Now, the exercises might be different, but the structure of the start of every session, his first 4 exercises are going to be in a little 4-station circuit, and they're all going to be lower body exercises. Is how I'm going to make sure I structure his training to achieve the aim. So they're the 2 things there. I've spoken about why I've chosen it, and then I've spoken about how I'm going to structure his training. So if you want to put that down as your first program aim, that's cool. But then you have to then pick 2 more and tell me why you've chosen it and why you think it's going to help his goal, and then how you're going to structure his training to achieve that aim. So just re-look at your answers, guys. Make sure in your answer you've explained why that's a program aim. It's not just how you're going to adopt it into your program, but why you've chosen that to be a program aim. So going back to that example that I said before about the muscular endurance, the reason why I chose that as a program aim was because the mountain bike riding is predominantly lower body, and you need you need good lower body muscular endurance to last longer on the bike. So by improving lower body muscular endurance is going to help him achieve his goal of having more stamina. So make sure, you've got to refer everything back to his goal of getting healthier and more stamina on his mountain bike. So how is that program aim going to help him achieve that? If you haven't got that in there, you need to add that in. Sweet. All right, guys, we'll spend 1 more minute on this, and then we'll move on to the next question. All right, moving on to the next question, guys. A short little workshop that we've easy to get through. But our last question is just to explain how you would ensure Trent's initial consultation documents would be kept secure and confidential within a fitness facility. Now, the main thing here, guys, is that you got to realize is by law, we've got to keep these on record or on file for 7 years. Okay. So we do have to find a place for them so that we can ensure that we do keep them for 7 years, because if something happens and a client down the track wants to come back to us and accuse us of something going wrong, legally we need to show documentation that, number one, we train the client, and number two, that we screen them properly before training them. So 7 years what we need to do. So how we keep things for 7 years, we recommend that you put them on something like Google Drive electronically, so they're not creating space for you. So if you have a filing cabinet, once that filing cabinet fills up, you then need to get another filing cabinet, another filing cabinet, another filing cabinet. So you don't want to create more work for you and less space. So having them on like a cloud-based system is probably the best way to go about it. But if they are paper formed, then they need to be in a lockable filing cabinet within a lockable office. So that's what they recommend as best practice. That if you do leave them in the gym or in an office at home or wherever, that it's in a lockable filing cabinet, and that lockable filing cabinet is within a lockable office. And if they are on a cloud-based system, they recommend that you change the password every 6 to 12 months so that it's a new password, so people can't get into it if they're trying to get into it. So in our answer here, guys, just explain, the main things that we need to talk about is that as a fitness professional, with this type of documentation like pre-screening forms, we need to keep them for 7 years is what they recommend for best practice. And to achieve that, to make sure that these initial consultation documents are kept safe and secure. If they are paper-based, that we put them in a lockable filing cabinet within a lockable office. But to help us keep them for 7 years, it's recommended that we do put them on a cloud-based system, something like Google Classroom, and ensure that the password is changed every 6 to 12 months. So something along those lines. So that's what we want to have our answer to kind of structure out to look like. So if you can put that down, this first workshop will be finished. All right, once that's done, guys, make sure you just go through those other questions that we did just then. Make sure you're happy with them. And if you are happy with them, then we can hand that in. And that's our first workshop to get through today. All done. Nice and simple, nice and quick, nice and easy. So hand that in, and then we'll move on to the next one, which is a little bit longer. So we'll spend a little bit more time getting through that one.